What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah. And this morning, super hot take. This morning, while I was eating my frosted mini wheats, talking with God about the day, just getting started, absolutely blew my mind. This is not the video I was intending to make, but it has so thoroughly captivated my heart and mind, I'm going to go with it right now. I haven't even had time to write about it. I write sticky notes to myself for when I have an idea that I have to capture in order to develop later. Oh man, my brain is just going crazy. When Saul was made king over Israel, the people of God told Samuel that they wanted a king like all the other surrounding nations. Samuel had a hard time letting go of that. God told Samuel, don't worry about it, Samuel. They're not rejecting you as my prophet. They're rejecting me. I'm going to give them a king. Gave them Saul, and Saul was head and shoulders taller than all the other people. Tons of backstory, but he started out as a good king, that he waged war against the enemies of the Lord's people and did a good job, but he began to be seduced by glory, by surrounding himself with mighty men who were known for their valor, and he would destroy the things that were detestable, but he kept the things that made him look good. And he started getting stuck in a mindset of ruling from a place of power. And eventually it wound up getting him disqualified as king, that the Lord had told him to destroy a specific people that he went into conquer, but he kept the things that would benefit him. When Samuel shows up, he said, did you do everything that the Lord said? And Saul says, yeah, absolutely. And then Samuel says, then what is the bleating of these sheep in my ears? I love Samuel. He's such a saucy dude. And so from that time on, it says that the Lord rejected Saul as his king. David then was anointed as king. And he lived during the same time that Saul was still in power over the nation of Israel. Fast forward then to Goliath and the encounter that you have, the David and Goliath that we're all so familiar with. I'm going to read my sticky note because I just wrote this morning. Oh, it's killing me. Every generation of leadership will attract a Goliath seeking to make a name for himself by taking the glory of leadership. So in heaven, Lucifer said that he was going to take a name for himself, that he was going to be as God Most High. And in order to make a name for himself, he had to lay assault to the throne of heaven in order to take the glory of God. It didn't work out so well for him. That is brokenness beating itself against perfection. So if we come down to the earthly plane, every portion of leadership, I'm talking about myself, has within their mindset some element of earthly thinking that trips them up, that they're not aware of, that's being refined in them, it's being sanctified out of them. But there's something in their leadership that is honoring things or looking to things that are outside of God that they're blind to. And again, I'm talking about myself. There's those things in my perception, in my mindset that my Father is working to purge out of my life. I think mostly through community, as he surrounds me with followers that they help to refine those things out of me. But most of us are generally unaware of what that specific element is, that blind spot, that ministerial myopathy in our leadership that we're not seeing. It might not be a good idea to try to make a video that I'm processing in the moment, but I have to. This is killing me. So every generation of leadership will attract a Goliath seeking to make a name for himself by taking the glory of leadership. So Saul was a king like the nations around him. That's what the people said. We want to have a king like the nations around us. And God gave him a leader who was head and shoulders above all of the people of Israel. And so here along comes Goliath, who is massively heads and shoulders above Saul, comes and confronts Saul's brokenness in his leadership, that he was not sufficient. Even while he was a big person, he was not as big as God. And like we talked about in one of the previous videos, man, my brain is just spinning. that the people of God finally got weapons, and that Saul waged war with weapons, and Jonathan gained great victory while holding a sword, and so that people's minds had begun to be worked to. He is our champion. Saul protects us. We have to have swords and weapons in order to fight the enemies of the Lord and be successful among the nations. That was beginning to take root. So Goliath comes along, seeking to make a name for himself and the Philistines by taking the glory of God's people, which is trying to rob God's glory. Not a good idea. Next statement. Also, there will be some growing misperception within leaders and those following that needs to be transformed through the renewing of minds. So again, like I just mentioned, that there's this mindset that's growing of Saul is our protector, he is our champion. We now have weapons and swords to make a name for ourselves in the other nations by taking glory for ourselves by defeating them through swords. No. God said, I didn't choose you, Israel, because you were the mightiest of nations. No, I chose you because you were the half-pint rejects. I'm making my glory known through you, through your weakness and stupidity, your perpetual rebellion to me. I'm showing myself as faithful. I'm showing myself as being glorious. And so, statement, there will also be some growing misperception within leaders and those following them that needs to be transformed through the renewing of minds. So along comes David, steps in, makes a prophetic speech and says, behold, all you leadership, everyone gathered here, know you this day that the battle belongs to the Lord, not to the sword. And then goes out, takes off that mindset, takes Goliath's headship off, and says, no, I'm taking off that false mindset that's attempting to control the body and assimilate it into the body of the Philistines, an unholy nation. Because they said, if we defeat you, we're going to pull you in, you're going to be our slaves and serve our empire. You're going to become a part of our body. And it was a false mindset that was on that body. It was inviting, tempting, luring, attempting to snare and captivate God's people into that body. David went in, he cut off that false headship, that lying mouth, and he brought transformation to the people's minds, God's people, by saying the battle doesn't belong to the sword, it belongs to the Lord. He made a declaration. Out of the overflow of his mouth, God spoke, he prophesied, and that word, that fresh word, transformed and renewed the minds of the fighting men, such that when David struck his mighty victory, the men raised up a mighty shout, ran straight into battle, and chased the enemies of the Lord down, cutting them down for miles. So good. Read it one more time. There also will be some growing misperception within leaders and those following them that needs to be transformed through the renewing of minds. Okay, here we go. Instead of leadership shrinking back and advertising for ministerial mercenaries, sit in that one for a while. Ministerial mercenaries to fight their battles for them in their armor so they can hoard the glory for themselves. Pause. We're going to pause on that. That is a long thought. Pause on that. So Saul shrinks back. He's confronted by this principality that was attracted to him, that was tailor-made to make him look like an asshat. He shrinks back because he's like, I can't go up against that. He's blinded by what was constraining his leadership. He shrinks back and starts advertising for mercenaries to come and fight his battle. What is a mercenary? A mercenary is someone who kills for money. So once they've received their wage, they agreed, I'll go kill the giant for half your kingdom and your daughter. That's his wage. He can't be paid in praise or honor. And so a king retains praise and honor for himself by paying a mercenary to fight a battle that the king doesn't want to besmirch his hands with, or he's afraid to fight, or doesn't think he can get done, or is afraid, or whatever reason. A mercenary is someone who fights another's battle for a wage so that the one who paid the wage can retain the praise and honor and position and glory and status without having to go into the battle. Ministerial mercenaries. So Saul shrank back, and he's advertising, but he says, when David comes along and says, I will fight Goliath, Saul says, no, if you're going to go and fight him, you have to do it in my armor so that people see my armor in battle and my stamp is on it. I got it done with my sword and my armor, which is how we gain victory, which is the misperception. David says, ain't having none of it. Get that out of here. So, read it again. Instead of leadership shrinking back and advertising for ministerial mercenaries to fight their battles for them in their armor so they can hoard the glory for themselves, yuck, royal authority sends their children in their own identity to glorify them in victory. Oh, who does that sound like? That sounds like my Father. That our Father, when Lucifer said, hey, I'm going to make a name for myself by taking your glory, the Father said, I don't think so. Smacked him down to earth, said, you get down to earth. And guess what? In this family, I don't compete with those who attempt to take my glory. Competition is a complement to co-equal competency. No, our Father does not compete with darkness. Satan is not our Father's enemy. He's ours, but he's not our Father's enemy because he can't compete. He can't go head to head with our Father. Not a chance. And so our Father says, no, my mind is perfect. My kingdom is perfect. And I operate out of perfection. I operate out of the excess of perfection. My ways are beyond perfection. They are boundless and they have no limits. So let me tell you what I'm going to do, Satan. How about you go down to the battlefield and you spout your lies, and I'm going to tell you what. I'm going to send my son out to confront you and tear your head off because there's a little bit of a misperception amongst your empire that you're going to assimilate my people, my children, into your body to build your empire. Are you? Interesting. Elijah, I want you to go. And I want you to confront darkness. I want you to go and tear the head off of death, darkness, and destruction. And then invite all my people into following you, into chasing them down and cutting them to ribbons. I want you to whip them like that donkey. And take lots of pictures. Take lots of high definition videos that will play on forever and ever on a large screen above the pit of hell to have them watch and see what happens to the enemies of the Lord who would seek to make a name for themselves by taking from my glory. Son, go, for I am with you. See, that's the mindset of royalty. That our Father in heaven said, no, I'm not advertising for any mercenaries. See, you can't come and apply to be a part of this battle because you don't have the qualifications. You're weak, you're foolish, and you're non-existent. I haven't made you. I have to form you out of the ground, out of the dirt of the ground, and breathe the breath of my life into your nostrils in order for you to have substantive being, in order to be sent by me, for me to be with you to confront the enemies of darkness. So, need not apply. No ministerial mercenaries in heaven. But I'm dreaming of a family. I am dreaming of a son. And I'll send my son to fight the first and greatest battle, to get the victory, so that my children can go out from victory, not fighting for it. But I come to the Father and I say, did you hear the lies that principality over there in that country has been spouting about your Father? That has gone on long enough. Would you please authorize me to go tear his head off? Father says, Tell me some testimonies, son. Instruct yourself. Meditate on the testimonies of what I have done. Orient your mind and your heart, son. I love your passion. Orient your heart and mind, your zeal on the testimonies of what I have done in you, son. Are you strong enough to fight a bear, son? No, Dad. All your power. Are you strong enough to rescue lambs from lions' mouths, and then when they don't sit down and be quiet, to bludgeon them to death? Are you strong enough to do that, son? No, Dad, I don't. I don't have the courage on my own. That is your courage. It is your capacity, Father. Wonderful, son. Because this principality that you're going up against has been trained in warfare and the knowledge of who you are and your weaknesses before you were ever born. He's been studying humanity since the beginning. And if you go in your own strength, son, he will tear you limb from limb and send your body back to me in a box of bloody parts. Do you understand that, son? I do, Father. Good. Go, for I am with you. You see, that is how the church moves forward. That's the heart of the Father in the forward movement, the forward advance, the success of his church on earth. Every generation of leadership will attract a Goliath seeking to make a name for himself by taking the glory of leadership. There also will be some growing misperception within leaders and those following that needs to be transformed through the renewing of minds to have the mind of Christ. Instead of leadership shrinking back and advertising for ministerial mercenaries to fight their battles for them in their armor, in their methodologies, in their programs, in their ministry models, so that they can hoard the glory for themselves. Royal authority sends their children in their own identity and glorifies them in the victory. My child will rebuke you. I'll sit here and watch. Go get him, son. I am with you. What if leadership of today were, instead of trying to trick their sons and daughters into getting killed by sending them out to get the foreskins of their enemies, and they come back with double the amount that they were sent out with, but they just keep trying to get them killed? What if, instead of running from the enemies of God, seeing all your sons and daughters struck down, taken away from you by the onslaught of evil, and then throwing yourself on your sword? Those who live by the sword will die by the sword. What if we were to see the prophetic acts of Scripture? What if we were to instruct ourselves in the testimonies contained in Scripture? What if we were to look at the heart of the Father who sat on the throne of heaven, kicked back and relaxed, and sent his Son to confront all the powers of hell? And as leadership, we saw that God was serving to preserve before him a nation of priests, royal priests, to minister and rule before him always. And that as we allow our sons and daughters to prophesy to us, as they come and say, Dad, you know these massive principalities that just have you sat back on your heel, it's because you have a cataract. You have a blind spot that needs to have divine surgery. Please send me into battle. And beyond that me as being a leader, that when I see something that's been tailor-made to make me look like an asshat, I feel myself getting scared and worried. I'm being tempted by lies, worry, anxiety. And I would be oriented to the Father's heart to know, I know which of my children to call to send into battle. And then to sit back, run the handy cam, and be refined, be purified, be prophesied to by the prophetic acts that would follow in the demonstration of victory. I don't have time in this video to be able to summarize an application. That was all over the map. That was just the overflow of this moment of passion. I have to go back and watch this myself to learn and capture it all in here. Welcome to my Father's heart. If you subscribe to what I'm doing, hit the button. Hit it and then get it. Yeah. Hit the bell as well so that you get notified with the new content. And if you loved this video, you didn't just like it, hit the thumbs down button. Pray blessings on our lives together. I love you guys lots. And I will see you in the next video. 23 minutes, 53 seconds. I'll trim some of that off, maybe, in editing, but yeah, it's kind of the end result of prophesying in the moment and processing in the moment. Man, I love it when my dad tells me stuff over frosted flakes and coffee in the morning. He's a good dad. What's up, fam? Extraordinary Life with Elijah. And I couldn't be more pleased in how this studio is coming together. Oh my goodness. Blessings to you, Jeff, my friend. This is incredible. Lots of people ask me, how long have you been accruing all of this equipment and all this studio space, Elijah? And I always say, you know what? None of it's mine. It's all from Jeff.